That Weird Cook.
Welcome everyone to the That Weird Cook, Pumpkin Spice do it again. Welcome everyone to the That Weird Cook, Pumpkin Spice Pandering Special. This is gonna be part one of a two-part video series that explores some creative applications of this heavily marketed spice mixture.
I'm doing this as a cynical play to get a wider audience so as to be able to make some money off of the ads that YouTube runs on the videos of small content creators such as myself and probably you, who have little to no recourse against this pillar of the tech oligopoly and see none of this money.
The cinnamon-heavy combination of warm spices that we think of as pumpkin spice today has actually been around for at least a few centuries. Our modern version possibly having been developed out of the British mixed spice, or pudding spice, which contains cinnamon, nutmeg, and allspice, with cinnamon being the dominant flavor. The earliest written source on this side of the pond comes from the first known published American cookbook in a recipe for pumpkin, which calls for mace, nutmeg, ginger, molasses, and allspice, but curiously, no cinnamon. What I want to do is take Amelia Simmons' humble and endearing recipe for pumpkin and pander the shit out of it. At its core, this dessert is really just a pumpkin cheesecake, but with a little extra zazz. Seeing as every component in this pumpkin cheesecake is going to be made from scratch, let's get started. And now for the cream cheese. You'll need to combine equal parts milk and cream and bring it to somewhere between 75 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. While this is happening, dissolve 3 drops of rennet into 1 tablespoon of fresh sink water and sit tight. Once your hypothetical cheese comes up to temp, add your aqueous solution and stir it around. Then put the lid on and let it sit tight for a counterintuitive 18 hours. Once you've had the day to think about and research foodborne illnesses, take the lid off and marvel at how your mix has thickened to a yogurt-like consistency. Then layer on about 3 to 6 layers of high-quality cheesecloth. Don't use the cheap dollar store stuff as it is too porous and the whole thing will become a sloppy, frustrating mess. Then simply hang it somewhere and let the whey drip out for an additional 6 to 10 hours. Then simply remove your cheese from the cloth and marvel at its tangy, rich flavor that absolutely obliterates the store-bought version in every factor imaginable except convenience. Now for the key ingredient, the actual pumpkin spice mix. Toast your spices in a dry pan on a low heat until fragrant. Then blend them up. I'm using a coffee grinder, which is something of a taboo. Apparently you're supposed to have a separate additional grinder just for spices. But I don't have an endorsement deal to justify, so I say go ahead and use the same one. Mix in your ground ginger and grate in about half a meg's worth of nutmeg. Whisk to combine and store in an airtight container so it retains its potency. For the homemade condensed milk, combine 3 cups of milk with a half cup of cream with 1 cup of sugar. Then cook that down on a medium heat, stirring occasionally until it's thick and syrupy, kind of like a dairy-based magma. For the pie crust, we're gonna get mildly creative. Instead of a butter crust, or even a graham cracker crust, we're gonna make one big snickerdoodle cookie, a most dignified confectionery with a rather unfortunate name. Start by mixing together your butter and sour cream using your squeeze hooks as necessary, then crack in your eggs, maple syrup, and sugar and continue until smooth. Followed by your pumpkin spice and flour. Work your flour in, but don't get too aggressive. Otherwise, gluten will invite itself to the party and make everyone feel awkward. Once you've taste tested the cookie dough for E. coli, rest it in the fridge for a few hours up to overnight so the partygoers have some time to form meaningful connections. Next, cut out a circle of wax paper using that trick the bakers do, and flatten your dough until flat. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 minutes or until it's puffed up, and let it cool. Go on and get yourself a pie pumpkin, occasionally referred to as sugar baby pumpkins. Cut it and gut it, and reserve the seeds for roasting and salting. We're not going to use them in the pie, but they're good on their own when the night is late and the eyes are bloodshot. Lightly coat them in oil and bake them at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes. Take them out and let them rest until they're cool enough for you to take the skins off. Once again, see my Etsy for what I'm calling an organic bra. Then puree the pumpkin meat with some cream, some of our homemade condensed milk, the pumpkin spice mix, add some more to taste, some salt for balance and subsequent depth, and finally maple syrup. Keep adding all of these things to taste as your palate dictates. Pour out about 2/3 and save the rest to combine with the cream cheese. First, make some whipped cream. In order to do this, you'll have to whip some cream and set it aside. Do the same with your cream cheese. Whip it until it's smooth. Then add in your sugar and whip that in. Once you add the sugar, your cream cheese will noticeably cream. Add in some brown sugar, your pumpkin spice mixed spiced pumpkin pie mix, some more pumpkin spice mix, and give it a mix. Then fold in your whipped cream. For the pastry cream, make a milk hot tub and drop in 2 swinging vanilla pods that have been successfully scraped. Then separate 6 egg yolks and whip them into ribbons with a generous ½ cup of sugar. Then add in a ¼ cup of cornstarch and whip them some more. Temper the mix with a few cautious pours of the hot vanilla milk, and then add the mix to the pan, whisking vigorously to ensure even heat distribution, ventilation, and avoiding unintentionally making the world's grossest scrambled eggs. First, the mix will be foamy on top and runny underneath, but soon the foam will dissipate and the run will slow to a jog and then soon to a crawl as your pastry cream comes together. Then put it through a sieve to fish out the now spent vanilla pods and put it in the fridge. The first layer will be the pumpkin spice mixed spiced pumpkin pie mix, then a layer of our cream cheese concoction, then the pastry cream, the whipped cream, a light dusting of our pumpkin spice mix without the spiced pumpkin pie mix, so just the pumpkin spice mix, and some crushed cashews for textural contrast as well as sympathetic creamy flavor. As you can see, this pie doesn't really hold up in room temperature, but let's give it a try anyway, shall we? I think this is the sloppiest pie I've ever eaten. I got it all over my face. First of all, the Snickerdoodle cookie dough sponge pie crust sponge thing was definitely a hyperbolic stroke of genius. It's a great structural base for all the goop that sits on top. And as for the goop, I mean, what's the goop made of? Well, we've got our pumpkin puree with the pumpkin pie spice mix. Then we've got our
cream cheese with the pumpkin pie spice mix. Then we've got the pastry cream.
Hey.
This is the Gotron of desserts. Well, That's it for this week's episode on the historical origins of pumpkin spice. Stay tuned for next week's episode on how this humble spice mix became the 9-figure phenomenon it is today for 2 months out of the year.